The Los Angeles Clippers have been without both their star players, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, for a little over a month now. And as you would expect, that has hindered their performance this season. At the time I'm recording this video, the Clippers are now 24-25, which puts them 9th in the Western Conference. And with the return of both Kawhi and Paul George nowhere in the near future, is this season a lost one for the Clippers? Or will they remain competitive and maintain their play-in seed at the end of the season? But guys, before we talk about this topic any further, please remember to give this video a like, share with anybody you want to, and subscribe to my channel. I'll greatly appreciate any support you're willing to give. And if you're also interested in anything I do outside of YouTube, make sure to give me a follow on Instagram and TikTok at SportsButCasually. Over on my Instagram, I will be dropping my top 10 players at each position so far in the NBA season, so make sure to go over there and check them out. You will be surprised. Now let's get into it. Entering this new season, the Clippers were actually coming off their best season in franchise history, as the franchise advanced to their first ever Western Conference Finals in last year's playoffs. Damn, I still can't believe Lob City never made one. This is all despite Kawhi Leonard suffering a right knee injury at the end of Game 4 in their semi-finals matchup versus the one-seeded Jazz. They managed to rally and take the next 2 games and also managed to push the Phoenix Suns to 6 games. This is all thanks to Playoff P actually living up to his nickname. Now coming into this season with Kawhi expected to miss the majority if not the entirety of the regular season, the expectations for the Clippers were the lowest it's been ever since Paul George and Kawhi arrived. However, with PG still on the roster and a solid core of players that now have a lot of playoff experience, they were still expected to at least make the play-in tournament. And things were looking good enough to start the season. Despite some efficiency issues, Paul George was putting the Clippers on his back on both ends of the court and getting some solid contributions from Terrence Mann, Kennard, Reggie Jackson, and even Zubac. By the time Christmas rolled around, the Clippers were 17-15, which put them 5th in the Western Conference. But it seemed they weren't on a nice list last year, as all the Clippers got for Christmas was injury news for Paul George. And Cole, I presume. On Christmas Day, the team announced that Paul George suffered a torn ulnar collateral ligament in his right elbow, which is a strange injury as we generally only see it in pitchers in baseball. But he would have been re-evaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. Some time passed and the team announced that George needed more time to rest his elbow to see how it healed. So he would have been out a few more weeks, most likely past the All-Star break. Since he's been gone, the Clippers have gone 7-10, which is pretty impressive all things considered. But shouldn't be too surprising. This roster is made up of a nice blend of veterans and young players who have a great chemistry with each other. And it doesn't hurt the fact that they're well coached. But just how long can they keep this up for? I think that they could keep it up and remain very competitive in the West for 2 reasons. One, because this roster is very competent even without its 2 stars. Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris are not having the most efficient season, but considering now that they're both kind of the primary scorers on this team, and the fact that they're averaging more shots per game than they have in their entire career this season, I'm willing to cut them some slack. They've been pretty solid. Terrence Mann has been enjoying a bigger role this season, and he's been improving bit by bit. And you also have guys like Ibaka, Zubac, Batum, Kennard, and Hartenstein, who are all very good role players. Especially Batum and Hartenstein. They've been very excellent role players this season, so shout out to those 2. I've also liked what I've seen from the young guys in BJ Boston and Amir Coffey. But really only Amir Coffey. I've actually been a fan of him ever since I saw him play in those warm-up games in the bubble. I think he's really good and should be a key rotation player for the Clippers going forward. He can score the ball and is especially effective in the paint and restricted areas, and has totally benefited from the extra minutes he's received this season. And going forward, I would love to see him remain in the rotation once Paul George comes back. But hey, that's just my opinion. Oh, and Eric Bledsoe's also contributing. I mean, he hasn't been bad. He's just been meh. That's 11 solid players who are all fighting to make sure their team remains competitive in the Western Conference. Now, the second reason why I think the Clippers will remain competitive this season is because, dog, they kind of have to. The Clippers absolutely cannot afford to have a lost season because they don't benefit from it. The Clippers don't have their first round pick this year, remember? So they can't afford to tank or to be bad because that would only bring disappointment to the fan base and a nice lottery pick to OKC. Now, with all that being said, it is totally possible that they might be bad this season. So some trades might be in order. And I totally get it. The Clippers are paying a shit ton of luxury tax. But I would not recommend a total fire sale. But I do think some players should be moved by the trade deadline. My boy Serge Ibaka is one of them. For money reasons, obviously. If the Clippers end up trading Ibaka, they would save a boatload of millions in tax penalties. To where you trade him to, I have no idea. Maybe the Hornets, or maybe OKC. I have no idea. Another guy to be moved would be Eric Bledsoe. I know he's on a 2-year deal, but next year, only 3.9 of his 19.3 million would be fully guaranteed. So he's kind of technically an expiring. He's a good defender still, well not good, he's a decent defender still, and he could play make a bit. So I do think he'll fetch value. You should send him to the Raptors, by the way. We desperately need some bench players, so I really wouldn't mind him. So yeah, I would totally understand making some moves to cut down on the luxury tax. But I would absolutely hate if the front office sells everybody on the team due to some series of unfortunate events. You have a good team now, and it will only get better when Kawhi and Paul George come back. It's made up of good veterans like Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, and Nicholas Batum. Not to mention you have some young and up-and-coming guys like Amir Coffey, Kennard, Terrence Mann, you have BJ Boston, you have Jason Preston, you have Keon Johnson. Wow, I can't believe I haven't mentioned those two before. Damn. With no concrete return date for their dynamic duo, they have their work cut out for them. Lucky for them, they have a decent lead over the 11th seed. However, they have over 30 games still left to play, not to mention an absolutely brutal schedule coming up in February. But Ty Lue is a pretty good coach, and I'm sure that he, along with the rest of the roster, will be able to steady the ship until that one day when their dynamic duo returns. Yo, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you all really enjoyed it. Let me know what you all think about the Clippers and how their season is going in the comments below. And Clippers fans, I have a question for y'all. If Paul George isn't set to return until late in the season, would y'all still like him to play those final games for y'all? Or would y'all prefer him to sit out the season and come back fresh with Kawhi next season? I'd love to know what y'all think in the comments below. But guys, that is the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I shall see y'all next time for my next video. Later.